Subcommittee will come to order. Thank you to all of our witnesses for being here. Today we're going to take a closer look at whether the Veterans Benefits Administration has implemented quality assurance and training programs to ensure that VBA employees properly process and decide veterans and survivors' claims for VA benefits. Inadequate employee training and effective quality control processes have led to the rework, waste agency resources, and incorrect decisions on veterans and survivors' claims for VA benefits. When the VBA claims processors have to redo their work, and when veterans and survivors have to appeal incorrect decisions on their claims, that adds months and years to how long veterans and survivors must wait to finally receive the benefits they are eligible for. Given this bureaucratic problem set, a lot of veterans just give up on pursuing their claims. We recognize that it is difficult to balance the goal of issuing veterans fast decisions on their claims with the goal of issuing fair and correct decisions. But we must ensure that quality is not sacrificed for quantity. VBA has made some great improvements to its quality assurance and training programs, including some progress since we first notified VA of our intentions to hold this hearing. However, based on our reports from the VA Office of Inspector General and the Government Accountability Office, there is much work still to be done. Numerous VA OIG reports have identified disproportionately high rates of error in certain kinds of disability compensation claims and certain processing tasks. Just last week, the VA OIG issued a report in which OIG estimated the VBA had an error rate of roughly 75% in claims. An estimated error rate of 75%, where veterans were seeking a 100% rating based on their inability to work. There are the so-called TDIU claims. That is much too high. OIG estimated that from May 2022 to April 23 alone, TDIU claims processing errors resulted in at least $100 million in improper payments, and that improper payments could have been as high as $250 million. As another example, in February of 2024, report OIG estimated that VBA had an error rate of 43% in claims where veterans were seeking benefits for hip and knee replacements. OIG estimated that from February 2021 to August 2022 alone, these hip and knee claim processing errors resulted in $3.3 million in improper payments. When errors result in underpayments, affected veterans do not receive the benefits they've earned. When errors result in overpayments, VA wastes taxpayer dollars. We owe it to the veterans, the families, and the American taxpayer to hold the VBA accountable for the quality claims processing and decision making. I look forward to working with the VBA leadership here with us today and employees as well as with GAO and OIG today and in the future to ensure that VBA's quality assurance and training programs effectively prevent these errors from happening again. With that, I yield to the ranking member for his opening statement.
Well, thank you, Chairman Luttrell. I look forward to exploring this important issue of quality assurance and training within the Veterans Benefits Administration together. From fiscal year 23 to the first half of 24, over 4.4 million disability claims have been submitted to VBA. As a result, veterans have been compensated nearly $143 billion for their injuries incurred while serving on our nation's security interests. The task of processing these millions of claims veterans depend on falls to just 20,000 claims processors inside VBA regional offices spread throughout the country. Because of the scale, complexity, and importance of VBA's disability compensation program, the GAO added the program to their high-risk list back in 2003. That's 21 years ago. Since then, both GAO and OIG have consistently identified quality and training-related issues that have uncovered deeper concerns in VBA's leadership ability to modernize and reform operations through quality assurance and training. I anticipate GAO and OIG will speak directly to their respective concerns outlined in their reports, so I'll share just two quotes sampled from their reports that I believe communicate the heart of the issue. From OIG, quote, "While VBA's quality assurance program routinely identified claims processing deficiencies and communicated results to internal and external stakeholders, OFO did not ensure that regional office employees took adequate corrective actions and addressed the deficiencies identified," end quote. From GAO, quote, "Reforms are done on a project-by-project basis without centralized leadership and not consistently in accordance to the leading reform practices," end quote. During visits to VBA regional offices, this committee has consistently heard concerns from claims processors about VBA's training and quality assurance efforts. The story's always the same. New employees return from VIP training feeling unprepared for the duties of their job. They've voiced these concerns to leadership but haven't been heard. In response, employees in regional offices have taken it upon themselves to design and implement grassroots training programs to fill the gaps in VBA's foundational training for new hires. This is unacceptable that any employee feels that they must contact Congress to receive the foundational knowledge they need to do their job effectively. Similarly, we consistently hear that individual performance standards are becoming increasingly strict. Employees are expected to process a higher volume in less time and at a higher quality. On top of this, in our last hearing, we heard how claims processors rarely receive feedback on errors they've made in their work. This significantly hinders the rate of an employee can learn and, by effect, overall workforce quality and retention. To be fair, VBA has had to respond to unprecedented demand from the success of the PACT Act. And to respond to that demand, they've hired and onboarded thousands of claims processors seemingly overnight. Even the most robust operation would be strained, but all systems must be continuously reevaluated. VBA employees face tremendous challenges in processing complex disability claims. These challenges are only exacerbated by changing policies and processes that are disconnected from the workforce. Claims processors need to have the training and support from management to meet the needs of veterans, especially under increasingly demanding production quotas and quality metrics. So today I want to explore the disconnect between the processes put in place by VBA leadership to meet claims processing volume and quality requirements and the daily experience of frontline VA employees. I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Our panel of witnesses today include our lead witness from the VA, Mr. Ron Burke, Deputy Undersecretary for Policy and Oversight in the Veterans Benefit Administration. Good to see you again, sir. Mr. Ken Smith, Assistant Deputy Undersecretary for Field Operations in the VBA. Good to see you again, Mr. Smith. Ms. Messenger, Deputy Executive Director, Operations Compensation Service at the VBA. Mr. Pleasure. Mr. Stephen Bracci, Director of the Compensation Programs Inspection Divisions for the VA Office of Inspector General. Mr. Bracci, a pleasure. And Ms. Elizabeth Curta, Director of Education, Workforce, and Income Security at the Government Accountability Office. Thank you for joining us. And Ms. Linda Parker Cooks, President of the Local 138 American Federation of Government Employees. Ms. Cooks, thank you for joining us. I ask the witnesses on our panel, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God? Thank you, and let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you all for being here today. Mr. Burke, you're now recognized for 5 minutes, sir, to deliver your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Luttrell, Ranking Member Pappas, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for inviting us here today to discuss the efficacy of the Department of Veterans Affairs, quality assurance, and training programs. Joining me today are Mr. Kenneth Smith, Assistant Deputy Undersecretary for Field Operations, and Ms. Christina Messenger, Deputy Executive Director, Operations, Compensation Service, both from VBA. VA is committed to providing outstanding customer service to the nation's veterans, their families, and survivors, and VA is steadfast in its commitment to provide accurate decisions for all veterans and survivors. VBA has a robust training and quality review program holding employees, regional offices, and program offices to the highest standard for producing quality claims decisions while also promoting continuous learning and performance improvement. We appreciate the subcommittee's interest in this topic, and I know we share the same goal of collaboration and continuous improvement. I would like to focus on a few efforts that I believe are innovative and have the potential to transform business as usual. My office, the Office of Policy and Oversight, in partnership with offices such as Compensation Service and the Office of Field Operations, has created a suite of quality-related programs to facilitate greater collaboration and better focus on root causes. In fiscal year 2022, VBA established the Overdevelopment Reduction Task Force for the purpose of reducing overdevelopment in the compensation and pension claims process. This task force includes a diverse group of subject matter experts from both VBA Central Office and the field, and is charged with analyzing the claims development process to streamline procedures. That particular effort led to more than 30 improvements, including guidance on requesting exams and preventing redundancy. VBA is currently in the second phase of this task force, which is now focusing on several large-scale initiatives that will have lasting positive impact on claims processing, with more than 60 improvements identified and underway as far as implementation is concerned. Additionally, since November 2021, VBA implemented work groups focused on both quality and training, where subject matter experts can share insights, lessons learned, and innovative methodology used for both quality and training programs across the benefits administration. This exchange of knowledge not only enhances the proficiency of claims processors, but also cultivates a culture of accountability and high standards within the organization. By leveraging collective expertise, VA adapts swiftly to changes in policy or procedures, keeping the VA workforce well equipped to deliver timely and accurate decisions for veterans. As a further example of VBA's commitment to continued process improvement of quality programs, at the start of FY23, my office established an overarching program for special focused reviews, or SFRs, which help identify gaps in performance and address identified areas of improvement. While individual program offices conduct their own SFRs, this additional oversight facilitates a consistent method to measure the efficiency and validity of procedural and policy actions. I'm proud to let the committee know in just under 2 fiscal years, VBA has completed 58 SFRs on topics ranging from CMP exam clarification requests to Camp Lejeune claims processing. In addition to immediate corrective actions taken to improve policies, processes, and performance, VBA has made 190 recommendations, of which 138 have been completed as of the end of June 2024. Additionally, as part of our larger effort to provide the best possible service to veterans and survivors, on June 6th of this year, VBA held the first Quality Stand-Down and Employee Wellness Day. This day met 2 important goals: improving the quality of our work across all business lines, from the central office to the field, and improving employee wellness and experience by addressing burnout and mental health. Nearly all of VBA's 34,000 employees participated on that day. Finally, we acknowledge that there is always room for improvement. In terms of training, VBA has taken a long, hard look at our current training programs and the efficiency of those programs. We've asked ourselves, what can we do better? How can we better prepare our claims processors? We've been out in the field actively talking to claims processors nationwide and gathering feedback. We've also been talking to our Veteran Service Center managers, VSOs, and AFG partners to get their comments and ideas, and then we're listening to ideas, listening to criticisms, and we're listening for ways we can improve. Based on this feedback, I'm proud to announce that in June of 2024, VBA kicked off a massive training modernization project for all VSRs and RVSRs, which will completely revamp and transform what training looks like, with the aim to significantly overhaul and transform the VBA training process. VBA has scrutinized the current training for claims processors and will be immediately tackling some effective short-term improvements which can be implemented within the next 3 to 6 months. Simultaneously, we've established work groups to completely revamp the training process with ambitious plans for long-term modernization of claims processor training. The training overhaul will result in a more effective process and better prepare claims processors to complete claims for veterans more efficiently with exceptional quality. We are excited for this next era of training for VBA. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my statement. My colleagues and I are prepared to respond to any questions that you or other members of the subcommittee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. The written statement of Mr. Burke will be entered into the hearing record. Mr. Bracci, you are now recognized for 5 minutes, sir, to deliver your opening statement.
Chairman Luttrell, Ranking Member Pappas, and members of the subcommittee, I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the OIG's oversight of VBA's quality assurance and training programs related to disability claims. While VBA has made enhancements to its quality assurance program, there is still work to be done. That program is intended to help ensure timely, accurate, and consistent claims decisions. And VBA's training program must prepare new and current employees to follow complex and frequently changing guidance. Given that millions of veterans and family members will receive over $150 billion in disability benefits this fiscal year, the OIG is committed to continuing its independent oversight to provide VBA with meaningful recommendations for improvements. As detailed in my statement, we have persistently identified challenges to both programs. 4 OIG reports from the last few years address such critical areas as 1, processing errors made on veterans' individual unemployability claims, 2, inconsistencies implementing changes to the disability rating schedule, 3, issues with claims automation, and 4, unwarranted medical reexaminations of veterans. In the individual unemployability claims report released last week, we found that VBA's training did not provide staff adequate examples to equip them to adjudicate these complex claims. We estimated that claims processing errors resulted in at least $100 million in improper payments during the 1-year review period, including both underpayments and overpayments. Earlier this year, a team assessed the effectiveness of VBA's implementation of disability rating schedule updates in 2021 for hip and knee replacement claims. We estimated that inaccurate decisions made by claims processors resulted in at least $3.3 million in improper payments. As a result, we recommended VBA implement claims accuracy monitoring when rating schedule revisions are made and update the training accordingly. Our findings reflect the larger concern that without thorough quality assurance processes, VBA cannot gauge the effectiveness of its training to make requisite changes that address the staff's training needs. We also issued a report last year that evaluated VBA's effort to implement an automated decision support tool that extracted and summarized blood pressure readings and hypertension-related medication data from veterans' records. The team found the summary sheets did not provide accurate and reliable evidence, resulting in incorrect decisions. We recommended VBA improve its quality assurance process and monitor the results to ensure the accuracy of summary sheets and final decisions. Another report published last year revealed that veterans were being required to attend unwarranted medical reexaminations. Although VBA may require veterans to be reexamined to verify a disability's existence or severity, unnecessary reexaminations subject veterans to undue hardship, waste money, and slow claims processing. We found VBA's practices were inconsistent with procedures and estimated that staff were erroneously establishing dates for reexaminations about 66% of the time. We recommended that VBA update training materials and ensure claims processors meet all training requirements. We will continue to track all recommendations from these reports until they are fully implemented. Concerns about VBA's quality assurance program predate these reports. Our 6 nationwide reports published from 2020 to 2022 detail issues we found with VBA's governance structure for the program. The Compensation Service, which administers the program and assesses accuracy nationwide, lacks the authority to remediate the issues and errors identified. That authority lies with the Office of Field Operations, OFO, which manages the day-to-day operations of VBA's regional offices. Therefore, it's critical that these offices coordinate effectively. We found issues with VBA's National Quality Assurance Review Program, called STAR. We also reported on concerns with the local quality review teams in place at regional offices. Lastly, we determined OFO did not ensure all claims processing errors were corrected. Although VBA has made progress in implementing action plans that address our recommendations, its leaders must continue to improve internal quality assurance and ensure high-risk claims are monitored. In closing, we continue to take on complex oversight projects to help VBA improve claims processing accuracy for veterans, their caregivers, and survivors, while making the most effective use of taxpayer dollars. Our ongoing work includes PACT Act, claims accuracy, as well as training for claims processors and medical examiners. Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Barachi. The written statement will be entered into the hearing record. Ms. Curdy, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your opening statement.
Good afternoon, Chairman Luttrell, Ranking Member Pappas, and members of the subcommittee. I'm pleased to be here to discuss GAO's work regarding VBA's training program for disability claims processors. Veterans who have been injured in service to their country deserve timely and high-quality disability compensation decisions, and claims processors play a vital role in responding to their needs. VBA is filled with dedicated claims processors who work hard to make numerous daily decisions on disability and other claims, which is often a complex undertaking. VBA faces well-known challenges with processing large volumes of disability claims and issues with the quality of decisions. In fact, one measure of accuracy for claims decisions has fallen from a high of 93% to 77% more recently. To help VBA manage increasing workloads with the influx of PACT Act claims, Congress has provided additional funding to help VBA hire thousands of new staff. However, hiring alone is not a guarantee of success. An effective training program is needed to, 1, help new claims processors become fully proficient, and 2, for seasoned staff to maintain their knowledge and skills in an ever-changing, complex environment. The focus of this hearing is appropriate because training and quality have a clear connection. That is, training helps prevent errors from occurring in the first place. My testimony focuses on VBA's progress in implementing the 10 recommendations in our June 2021 report. Our report examined wide-ranging aspects of VBA's training program for claims processors against a framework of leading practices for training. Overall, our report highlighted shortfalls in VBA's management of its training, such as directing and coordinating training across VBA, monitoring whether claims processors completed required training, and assessing training results. To remedy these shortfalls in how VBA planned, designed, implemented, and evaluated its training for claims processors, we made 10 recommendations. As of today, 6 of our 10 recommendations have been addressed, and 4 have not been fully implemented. I'm pleased with the progress VBA has made on addressing our recommendations, particularly in the past several months. For example, VBA has taken steps to enhance training for instructors who teach claims processors and to ensure that all assigned training is completed. However, VBA needs to fully address the 4 remaining recommendations. For example, we recommended that VBA establish performance goals with targets for VBA's training program. VBA has established performance goals for some aspects of its training, but lacks goals and targets for some of its annual required training. Further, VBA's plan for its training program lacks important details, such as how VBA training will help claims processors improve decisions accuracy. In addition, although VBA is collecting more feedback from frontline staff about its training, it's not clear how that feedback is being incorporated into improvement efforts. To some, this talk of planning and evaluation can seem quite dry and technical. However, effective management of VBA's training program can help claims processors meet veterans' needs by providing timely and accurate decisions. It can also save taxpayer dollars by reducing mistakes and rework of the same claim if it is appealed. So in closing, noted quality assurance guru Edward Deming once observed that a bad system will beat a good person every time. Developing a good system for training VBA's claims processors would empower staff to process disability claims more accurately and efficiently. This concludes my prepared statement, and I'm happy to address your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Curda. Your statement will be entered into the hearing record. Ms. Parker-Cooks, you're now recognized for 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Chairman Luttrell, Ranking Member Pappas, and members of the subcommittee, AFG and its National VA Council appreciate the opportunity to testify today. My name is Linda Parker-Cooks, and I am the president of AFG Local 138, representing the VBA Regional Office in Detroit, Michigan. I am a 20-year U.S. Army veteran and a service-connected disabled veteran. After my military service, I have continued to serve my fellow veterans at VBA for the past 18 years and currently serve as a decision review officer and a certified VBA Elite Master Instructor. On behalf of thousands of frontline VBA workers, over half of whom are veterans themselves, it is a privilege to offer AFG frontline perspective on how VBA trains its employees. VBA faces many challenges in effectively training its employees to process claims. I want to highlight several of these issues and offer specific changes that would better enable VBA employees to serve veterans. For decades, VBA used in-person and interactive challenge training that lasted several weeks. Today, VBA uses inferior virtual in-person training, including instructor-led web training and classroom training to train employees. The primary problem with IWT is that new employees have not yet mastered the basics of VBA. New employees in IWT do not understand the claims process or the VA lingo that is critical for employees to do their job. This is an easy problem to fix. IWT does not use the actual tools that employees will use in their jobs. In particular, new trainees do not have access to VBMS Core until after IWT. IWT provides examples in PDF format. Trainees will not use the actual technology for weeks. Employees are not trained on if they can grant or deny service connection, or the elements required to grant on a direct, secondary, aggravated, or presumptive basis. Furthermore, IWT does not train employees to analyze a claim and review evidence, including VA medical records, DBQs, and what this evidence says about having a current diagnosis. Again, they have only seen PDF examples. To improve IWT, employees must have access to VBMS Core and review claims in the system instead of looking at PDFs. Additionally, VBA must teach new employees the basics, including learning the claims process, VA terminology, and what a claim looks like. It must also give employees hands-on experience with the technology they will actually use every day. AFG also recommends that the current size of 100 be lower to no more than 35. Smaller groups allow for more interactive environment and more questions to be addressed during class. VBA has trainers available to them but are not using them effectively. Following IWT, trainings shift into several weeks of classroom training to refine their skills. AFG urges VBA to be more strategic and reorder the curriculum to allow the employees to better learn the information. Currently, classes are taught in a haphazard order instead of sequenced to enhance on the building of concepts. Training should be reordered to allow instructors to reference the material that was just taught, reinforce the concepts, and use this to teach higher-level concepts. Following the completion of IWT and classroom training, there are still significant gaps on critical issues employees will need to perform their duties successfully. AFGE recommends VBA's training to include modules on weighing evidence, due process, and denials of service connection that will help employees' confidence, performance, and retention. As a result of the current curriculum and schedule of VIP and classroom training, regional offices have been forced to provide supplemental training to fill in the learning gaps and the lag in starting national training. With VBA using the national work queue and relying on the idea that each employee, regardless of station, is trained the same way, AFG strongly recommends standardizing this supplemental training. Lastly, the PACT Act training primarily consists of prepared PowerPoint presentations in the talent management system and self-review of the ever-changing SOP. This training is not interactive and is there more to check the box than actually help the employees do their job. AFG again urges VBA to consult with AFGE to understand the problems frontline employees are facing and what training would help to improve performance. AFG and NVAC stands ready to work with the committee and VBA to improve training and quality. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
The written statement of Ms. Cooks will be entered into the record. We'll now move to questioning. Ms. Parker Cook, sounds like you got it figured out. Who's on the receiving end of what she just said? Is that you, Mr. Burke? Yes, sir. I was hanging on every word she just said. I'm hoping that you were too. And given Mr. Bracci's report, is any those communications happening between AFGE and you guys?
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, got a very good working relationship with my partner in AFG here. We are.
Is that true? This is the time you can be totally honest in here.
I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to lie to you.
I appreciate you
I'm not
saying
gonna lie
that.
to you.
Okay.
They got a very good relationship with not only AFG, but also our partners in IG. That's also true. What I can tell you is most of what you just heard is being incorporated into a massive training modernization process that it's already underway. We're looking at how we improve the training to employees. We're looking at how we capitalize and maximize more in-person, smaller class sizes, more access to real cases, earlier access to VBMS, all of the things that was just discussed or were just discussed. Those are part of 4 massive work groups that we have right now that are chiseling away at revamping the way that we modernize the training.
You agree with that statement, Ms. Cooks?
I hope that's happening. I hope it's happening.
We do too. You seem to be the subject matter expert in what you're in your opening statement. I'm hoping that what he just told me is being confirmed by you that it's happening. Is that true?
I have not seen the changes yet. I have not seen the changes yet. I do know that, again, what I have shared here has been shared with Mr. Burke, and so I hope that they did take our input to actually implement those changes.
I would hope before we have you in front of this committee again, I can look directly at Ms. Cooks and say, thank you, Mr. Burke. That's exactly what probably should have happened. I would hate to think that you come back in here and she says they didn't pay any attention to me whatsoever. That wouldn't happen.
Could I add to that, sir?
Absolutely.
So we're at the early stages of working groups.
What's early mean?
Early means we just formed them in a month and a half ago. We established working groups. And in my written testimony, my oral testimony rather, I talked about we've identified items that can be implemented in the next 3 to 6 months. I have the pleasure of going to Labor Management Forum next week in Chicago with a friend of mine, where a briefing will be on the training modernization efforts. So if we had this meeting or this hearing next week, you would have a better feel that we're on the same page.
Okay. I'm going off of what Mr. Bracci told us, that it's been the past 3 or 4 years, I believe you said 3 or 4 years, of kind of a repeated report. So I'm good to see there's traction and that you're moving on this. Mr. Bracci, and I kind of missed it, but you said the operations officer doesn't have authorities that he or she may need?
The compensation service.
Is that Ms. Messenger, does that belong to you? What he's speaking on, as far as authorities? Go ahead, Mr. Bracci.
The compensation service, which actually falls under Mr. Burke's authority.
Okay.
It oversees the quality assurance program. They conduct reviews. They have analysts that conduct reviews and report on quality nationwide. but they don't have the authority to remedy and make sure that errors are
So
corrected.
please explain to me what authorities he needs, so if it's something that we can address, or is it secretary-driven?
Currently, that authority lies with the Office of Field Operations. So they oversee regional offices and claims processors, and they drive decisions on priorities. They have to ensure that training is completed, have to ensure that errors are corrected. So that's the office that has the authority to make sure that errors are.
Is supposed to have the authority?
They have the authority under the
They
organization.
do have
structure.
it. Okay, maybe I misunderstood what's going on.
They do, yes.
Okay. So just to be 100% clear, you do have the authority that you need.
The answer is yes to that question, sir. And in fact, the Office of Field Operations has recently stood up a compliance office that is not only helping to ensure that required training is met, it is the one that is connecting information to our performance standards group to ensure that in our employee performance standards, there are expectations on timeliness of corrective actions. And that also is a new office that was stood up a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, I don't have the exact date, to address the gap that IG just spoke about.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pappas, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you. I want to first focus on an issue that came out of the OIG reports. Rating schedule update for hip and knee injuries. OIG found that an estimated 38% of claims had an improper payment. So, Mr. Burke, is VBA initiating a special focus review to address these errors? And if not, why not? And if so, what's your timeline for completing it?
So yes, sir, we will be doing a special focus review. We actually reviewed the IG's findings. We have taken, much like the TDIU cases, where there are claims that need to be corrected, we'll take corrective action, but we're also trying to figure out if there are gaps in our training to the field. And so we go back with those findings, we can improve the training, update policies and procedures. And then again, we use the special focus reviews to do targeted, after we do big releases like manual changes, VASRD changes, we'll do a short period of time, go back and pull cases to see if we're compliant. And our findings are similar with what the IG found.
How do you make that assessment about whether or not there's a gap with respect to training as you undertake one of these special focus reviews?
In some instances, it's pretty clear that the mistakes are pretty common, and we'll go back to the training and see that the training was either vague or contradictory. And so basically, the policies, the training materials is really the guide, what we expect employees to follow. When we find the outcome of the employee's work is consistently going down a path that it was not intended to go, that is normally not an employee issue. That is normally a policy or training issue. And so seeing those consistent trends allow us to trace it back and say we have a gap in what we've provided to the field.
So when VBA hears about a pervasive quality issue from OIG or GAO, what criteria do you use to decide whether or not to initiate a special focus review? Or is it a monetary value involved? Is it a percentage? What are you looking at to trigger that? Or is it subjective?
So typically with special focus reviews, we allow all of VBA's business lines to recommend to my office the focus in advance. Typically, it's timed to the release of something new, something substantive that we want to make sure that employees have grasped the training and the training was adequate. So most of our special focus reviews have to do with something that we've released relatively recently, a change in law, change in a process or a procedure, and then we will approve the selected special focus review. The results of the special focus review then come into my office and the recommendations and findings are tracked until closure. So we do give our lines of business some leeway, if you will, to pick those themes. We approve them and then track the results.
Okay. Ms. Parker-Cooks, I appreciate your testimony as well. You identified a long list of issues that could be looked at with respect to improving training. I'm wondering if you could just talk more broadly about the quality of training itself and how that impacts frontline employees and our need to focus on recruitment and retention.
Thank you. So what I would like to say is that when you're looking at the training and the quality of it, and I specifically talked about the VIP, and it's interesting that you brought up about the changes with the musculoskeletal conditions. VIP rarely focus on those, and that's our largest category. We're always getting claims for back condition, knees, hips. And so in VIP, they cover the back and maybe the knee, but they're not getting detailed training. So it's interesting that that's a high level of errors that you're seeing because they're not focused on that training. But I think when you're looking at it, the clear thing is that we're starting them out and they're not getting the basics. They don't understand what they're supposed to do. So by the time they end training, they're frustrated. They don't feel that they're prepared to do the job they've been hired to do. Their confidence level is low. And then, of course, you're seeing a revolving door where people are leaving. If we change and restructure the training, of course, where we're giving them the basics they need to start out and build on that foundation, you're going to find that the employees are more comfortable, confident, trained, and then they're going to also, of course, it's going to result in more positive quality decisions. So I think if we focused on, and I'm glad to hear that they're saying that we're going to be making changes to the training program, but that's what we need. We need to train our employees to do the job right from the beginning so that you don't see the rework. That's what you're seeing now when you're coming out of training is folks are doing the work, but because they weren't trained well and they're not confident in what they're doing, we're having more errors and you're having that work have to be redone.
We certainly shouldn't be setting people up to fail. We should be setting them up for success. So appreciate that feedback, and I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Mr. Self, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, and I make this comment almost every hearing, we hear a lot about inputs from VA. Inputs. We established this. Mr. Burke, in your testimony, established. Lots of inputs, very little about outputs. And Ms. Curta, I'm not sure I got it entirely right, made the statement, we don't know how training will help, I think it was employees, but in several times in your written testimony, you said basically the same thing. So I think I've found the sentence that you were referring to specifically. And I quote from the GAO written testimony, "The training program goals and measures do not address how VBA training will help achieve the desired accuracy of benefits decisions made by claims processor," which means your inputs are not working to change the outputs, is the way I read that sentence. So I want to hear more in the future what the outputs of all these things that you're establishing, all these bureaucracies that you're establishing. Now, my first question is to you, Mr. Burke, and I'm asking this on behalf of my Navy SEAL brother-in-arms, Mr. Crane. I have heard from VA employees in Arizona, too, that they received inadequate training on processing PACT Act claims, and GAO stated that VA has not provided GAO with VA's evaluation plan or reports for PACT Act training. So Mr. Crane asks, within the next 2 weeks, will you provide us with VA's plan for PACT Act training and reports on the trainings VA has already provided? Yes or no?
No, sir, I cannot commit to 2 weeks. I will commit to going back and coming back to this committee with an actual firm date. The reason I can't commit to 2 weeks, I'm not exactly sure where we are in that process.
Okay, I would ask you to get back with Mr. Crane to tell him when you will have that report.
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Burke, let's stick with you. OIG estimates there's been between $100 million to $250 million in improper payments in TDIU claims processing errors alone. These are errors alone. What is your plan to recoup these funds and prevent such significant losses in the future? $100 million to $250 million is a significant amount of money in anyone's budget.
Yes, sir. In reviewing that TDIU report, it's important to reflect that the findings were both overpayments and underpayments. Obviously, underpayments are as bad as an overpayment, right? Somebody's entitled to something, they're not getting paid for that. We have taken corrective action on 95% of all the cases identified in that report. We should have the remainder done here shortly. And then it is important to also note that the amounts, and my partner from IG can correct me if I'm wrong, that's not the actual overpayment. They use a different calculator. They project that, so there's not really that much in actual overpayments today. But to your question, wait a minute, I'd like the OIG to address that. $100 million to $250 million
That's not an actual figure?
100 million is, we use statistical sampling. So we look at a sample of claims, and then we project to that universe of claims. So that's how we come up with the 100 million.
Seems fair enough to me. So you mentioned a report, Mr. Burke. Will you, when will you have that report ready for Chairman Luttrell?
Which report? I know that I know I had mentioned.
A report on these overpayments and underpayments. You just mentioned it.
We're 95% through with the corrective actions. That doesn't necessarily result in a report, but we are happy to come back to the chairman to notify him when all 100% have been.
I was just
corrected.
using your word, okay? Mr. Bracci, what are the underlying reasons for these joint errors? What are the underlying reasons? 3.3 million in this case, not quite as big as the TDIU, but what are the reasons?
Yes, sir. Relevant to this hearing, we found issues with quality assurance and with training. In this case, we found that there wasn't targeted quality assurance that looked at these specific claims. Mr. Burke mentioned that they are now doing a special focused review that will cover that, so they are addressing the recommendations that we've made. And we found that in the training, there's a post-assessment after the training is completed, and we determined that about 75% of the employees who took the training initially failed that training, so it calls into question the adequacy of that training. So we also made recommendations to make improvements to that.
My time is up, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Bracci, I'm sorry, explain to me how you're taking a statistical evaluation to present this committee with 100 million to 250 million, and that's not the exact number?
Yes, sir. We do almost all of our work based on statistical sampling. So
Okay.
we look
What's
at...
our end value is what, that you're taking these numbers from?
In the TDIU report, we looked at 200 claims.
200 claims, so you got an end value of 200.
Yes.
And your evaluation of plus payment and minus payment is almost $250 million?
100 million in improper payments.
I'm sorry, I thought there was a 250 in there somewhere too.
No, the 100 million is what we determined was the improper payments for that universe of claims.
What's the total number? You took an end value of 200 out of, what's our gross statistical number?
I don't have that. I can come back to you with that number. I don't have the number in front of me. I know that there are 375,000 veterans who are receiving TDIU benefits.
Okay.
So
How much of that 100 million is overpayment?
not very much. The vast majority were underpayments to veterans. I think we identified, we projected about 85 million to be underpayments.
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see how that equation's processed, please, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely.
Mr. Burke, since the OIG's March 23 report showing that 44% of disability compensation exams were unnecessary, what's the VA doing to reduce unnecessary exams for our veterans?
Yeah, thank you for this question, sir. We have actually spent a lot of energy in reducing unnecessary development, specifically the Overdevelopment Reduction Task Force version 2, which wraps up at the end of this month, was specifically focused on exams. We focused on vendor exams, private DBQs, automation exams, and also the utilization and the effectiveness of a new exam request tool. This working group alone has been operating for most of FY24. They've already identified more than 60 manual change needs, improvements to tools and technologies, partnership with the IG on how to detect and report fraudulent DBQs, how to strengthen the messaging of using acceptable medical evidence and reducing unnecessary exams, because as you're aware and we're aware, calling a veteran into an exam that's not necessary is expensive, it's inconvenient, it can be confusing, and it delays the process. So we have focused significant efforts this year on the second version of the Overdevelopment Reduction Task Force, and I will commit now there will be a third one in FY25.
Okay, so when this task force is finished and the next one ramps back up, at what point are you going to push this out to all the VA facilities, and this problem will be remedied? Because that seems like a pretty heavy lift.
That is an extremely heavy lift. That's why we are on version 2, and there will be a version 3.
How many are we going?
Until we fix it.
Oh, man.
Until we fix it.
Okay. and I would assume there's not kind of a time frame at which that's going to hit Conroe, Texas, and I can tell all of my folks that we're good to go.
Every year I'm in this role, there will be one until we fix it.
Okay.
It's a big issue. We've got a lot of work to do.
Mr. Pappas.
Thanks. Maybe just a couple more. Mr. Bracci, if I can turn to you. It's always good to have a fellow Granite Stater here, so welcome. But you reported on so many acute quality issues in your reports. You reviewed root causes in the Office of Field Operations. Do you agree with VA's assessment about these quality issues?
Generally, yes. We acknowledge that disability claims processing is a complex process, constantly changing guidance. It's a difficult job to do. As we do identify issues, VBA does take action to address our recommendations. So we agree with the action that they take is responsive to the intent of our recommendations.
So, Mr. Burke, there's no question that VBA can adequately identify acute quality assurance issues. We're here because there's a structural issue limiting OFO's ability to implement and oversee policy changes to include action on quality deficiencies. I understand that there's going to be a major update to VASR D in the late summer or fall. So taking this specific issue, how can you assure the committee that the update will not result in the same sort of quality concerns that we've had over the last 5 years?
I will give assurance that we've learned from issues in the past. We are now including in the creation of materials more subject matter expertise from the field, more inclusion, more feedback. We are allowing folks in the field to kick the tires, if you will, on significant policy changes before we push them out to the field at large. We have excellent collaboration with the Office of Field Operations and the new compliance entity, well, all the entities within OFO. We're collaborating with our partners in AFGE and OIG. And I will say this, the one thing that I want to make sure that I leave with this committee is the fact that the VBA workforce is incredible. I've said this in previous hearings. Prior to this year, VBA has never completed 10,000 claims in a day. Never completed 10,000 claims in a day. This year alone, this amazing workforce has done it 87 times. And so we continue to ride the strength of our workforce and invest in the training and the improvements and learn from some of the mistakes from the past.
So once again, it would be helpful to leave this hearing with a clear indication of what your training priorities are, because that's such an important piece of this puzzle. So can you go over that again for me? Where are we going with training, and what resources are you bringing to bear to address this problem?
I can, yes, sir. In fact, what I want to describe and set up for a briefing here in the near future is our focus on the training modernization. We're really looking at, we've established 4 key groups, 4 working groups. One is to focus on the things that we do before formal training, how we onboard employees, how we equip them, how we screen them better to ensure they're the right people to do this job. That's the before formal training. Then we have a work group that is focusing on a complete redo of what we currently call VIP. VIP was done to replace the old challenge training. That was outdated. We've modernized everything within our organization except training. So now we're modernizing, and VIP will be a thing of the past once we do this. So the second phase of that, or the second work group, is the formal training. This goes to the tools, the technology, the types of cases, the types of topics, the micro-learning instead of dumping everything in front of an employee. That's the focus of that group. The third one is the continued employee development, because it's not just about training new employees, it's about refresher training, it's about consistency training. And then the fourth would be the resources, the roles, responsibilities. That goes to the class size, the instructor cadre, how we actually ensure we have the right people training our trainees and the right people that maintain their skill set to continue to train and do refresher training. We have a plan, we have a documented plan, we have a vision, and now we're executing with the work groups to get something that we can come back to this committee and brief on in much greater detail.
Well, we're eager to see more progress there. That's a pretty robust outline. And once again, just to underscore, you can't get there without folks like Ms. Parker-Crooks and others who I think have really terrific insights and recommendations and are going to be tasked with helping you refine this over time. So you've got to have an open mind and an open door with respect to those employees. Ms. Curta, if I could just go to you within the time I have remaining. You mentioned that your open recommendations related to training have to do with program strategy, goals, and evaluations. Is it safe to say that as it stands now, VBA's overarching training program is reflexive and reactive on an ad hoc, project-by-project basis? Is that how you'd characterize it?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else there you would like to leave us with respect to training?
Well, I think our recommendations, I mean, taking a step back from some of the micro issues, we're talking about the system they have in place to ensure training works. And so just taking a step back from them, getting out of that reactive mode, planning for what you want to accomplish, setting goals, priorities, having a way to evaluate your progress. So if you don't have a goal going into it, how are you going to know if you're accomplishing it at the end of the day? How are you going to monitor whether you're achieving the goal you set out to achieve? And that's what we were seeing missing back in 21 when we did this report. No clear goals, no clear strategy. They've improved some of those things, but I mean, this is what I'm hearing today is kind of new. So, we hadn't seen goals and evaluation plans for the existing training program. So now they're going to introduce a new program. So I would just recommend that they think about doing this in a disciplined way. I think you brought up our reform initiatives report earlier, and that's a roadmap to how to set up a program for success. Establishing goals, checking in with stakeholders, getting feedback from the people that have to implement the training and do the program and take the training, and having milestones and measures of success, I think are all really, really important. And that's an open recommendation that we have to VA as well, and we'd love to see them take some action on that report.
Yep. Mr. Burke, how do you feel about that one?
We generally agree. I mean, as Ms. Curtis said, I think there were 10 recommendations. 6 already closed out. The 4, they're partially addressed. We're continuing to kind of make headway with that. But I do agree, in order to gauge the success of something, you have to have some milestones and some measurements. And we're working to get to that point. That will be incorporated in the new training modernization as well. We are surveying with all of our training. We're doing surveys. We're getting feedback from folks. We are getting better in this realm. But noted that we need to continue to make some improvement there.
Well, I think her remarks were just an important cautionary note as you launch into this new effort for some important ways to be thinking about how you structure it, how you build in feedback loops, and what sort of benchmarks we can have along the way. So I hope you'll continue listening to those folks outside the department within it that can help guide the process.
Will do. Yes, sir.
Thanks. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Pappas. Keep leaning forward. You're never going to, I'll never wire brush you if you're leaning forward and thinking outside the box. You all are the subject matter experts. You're leaning forward to take care of guys like me and the rest of us in this room, okay? If I have to come in here and listen to another OIG report that says the same thing over and over again, just negative. So by you unpacking that thing, and I get what Ms. Curtis is saying, with the ranking member saying, yeah, put your guardrails up on your left and right flank and move forward effectively and efficiently. Ms. Parker Cooks, are you happy with what you're hearing in here?
Let's see what happens in 3 to 6 months. They said they have some things that can be implemented in 3 to 6 months. I'm looking forward to seeing what that is.
I can assure you, we most certainly are going to have every one of you back in here in front of us to see and hear just that, okay? Sure. I think that is a very fair statement. Because we're hearing what she's saying, and she is the subject matter expert when it comes to boots on the ground. That's a fair statement?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay. Okay. So thank you all for coming before us today and speaking on the important issues, ensuring that the VBA implements effective quality assurance and training methods so that the VA claims processors can provide our veterans and their families with accurate and timely decisions on their VA claims for VA benefits. With that, I yield to you, Mr. Ranking Member.
Just want to thank our panelists. I really appreciate your reflections today. And this stuff is so important to how we deliver the benefits that veterans deserve. So we've got to move forward in a way where we can set VA up for success, and just really grateful for the opinions that we heard here today. We want to work with you to get this right. So let's stay engaged, and I'm sure we'll be revisiting this pretty soon. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. And please keep up. We may wire brush you. I use that term quite, but you're doing your jobs and you're doing great work. You have to get up every morning and take care of unsavory people like myself and the rest of the veterans, right? That's just, I mean, that's an incredible job that you do. Just get better every day, okay? I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material. Without objection, so ordered. This hearing is adjourned.